Well, someone else who's spoken up this week, which I was delighted to hear, and I'm sure we all were, is Senator James McGrath, who spoke up against the ABC. We're in a situation where we spend $1 billion a year, much more than
$1 billion,
on the ABC, and yet our surplus is under threat. We've had problems with the coronavirus, bushfires, etc. Joining us now live from Brisbane, great friend of Outsiders, James McGrath. Senator, how are you?
I'm brilliant. And how are you two? How are you three?
We're very well, thanks, James. So you got up in the Senate. You basically called for the selling off of the $500 million worth of assets that Ultimo and the Brisbane and Melbourne offices. Now, just to put this in context, at the same time, Boris Johnson in London, we'll talk about this in a second, is looking at trying to make the BBC a subscription service. What can we do about the ABC, and why did you make those comments in the Senate this week?
The ABC has a budget of over $1.1 billion. Ita Buttrose was in Canberra this week asking for more money. I mean, she's having a laugh, isn't she? When you look at the ABC's property portfolio, which is almost $500 million, you look at how they operate as a woke corporation. I've got a joke for you. What do you call a quiet Australian in the ABC? Lonely, very lonely. Because the Australian Broadcasting Corporation is no longer the national broadcaster, it's becoming the un-Australian broadcaster. I've got a three-point plan. Sell off their inner city headquarters and move them out into the suburbs or the regions. Make sure we have a review of the ABC Charter and Act. Let's have ads on the ABC. They already have ads. They have their own ads. Why can't we have commercial ads? And thirdly, stop this self-selection process where like-minded ABC people keep recruiting like-minded ABC people. Look, I acknowledge the ABC does a good job in parts of Australia. I live out in the Darling Downs. I listen to local ABC radio. I will watch the ABC when I'm not watching Sky. But look, they're really becoming such a left-wing blob of just these boring, woke views. They need to get in tune with the quiet Australians.
James.
Well, I think that thing about the quiet Australians and the lefties hiring lefties, wokies hiring wokies seems to be the biggest thing to me. How do you change this? Because even if you move it, you know, we had this thing where when they did a Blacktown listening tour, you know, like as if this was some foreign country. The other day on one of the radio stations in Sydney, they spent hours sneering at women who decided that they wanted to stay home and, you know, take care of their family rather than go out and be economically earning career women, you know, like they're supposed to as good feminists. How do you... We've seen that no matter what you do at the top, it gets captured by the blob down below. What do you do? How would you actually go about enforcing some sort of change to the way that blob is constituted?
Well, I actually think my three-point plan is the way to do it. It's shifting the headquarters in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane out from that inner city CBD sort of latte set to, you know, in Queensland, to Caboolture or Beenleigh or Ipswich. So they're actually out where the quiet Australians are. So they're actually in the coffee queue, in Coles or Woolies, yes, mixing with quiet Australians, listening to their views. So getting public transport to those places. It's making sure that the selection panels aren't just three ABC people interviewing possible ABC people. Get some external panels involved there to get some, to shake it up a little bit. But it's also having the ads on the ABC. Because the ABC has its own ads, it's sort of like this fluffy little daycare centre where everybody's nice and, oh, really sweet, oh, blah, blah, blah. But let's get some ads on the ABC where they can see that people actually are interested in the price of from Harvey Norman or something like that, in terms of people are driven by trying to make their own budgets rather than the ABC being giving tons of money each year by the taxpayers. And we forget this, it's the taxpayers of Australia who fund the ABC. I don't care about The Guardian because it's not funded by the taxpayers. It can be as left-wing as it likes. But the ABC needs to make sure that it is the national broadcaster and represent all Australians rather than being some little hideout for woke Australia.
Now, well, I want to know what the support is in the party room for your three-point plan, because at the end of the day, the Liberals have won, the coalition has won 7 of the last 9 federal elections. Under your watch, the ABC has become more and more biased and left-wing and walked away from its charter in dramatic fashion. And Ita Buttrose, you guys appointed her. And you appointed her knowing that she wasn't going to do anything about that bias. And in fact, it's got worse under her watch. So is this plan going to be embraced by your colleagues, or are they just too gutless to tackle this giant media player?
Well, it was interesting. When I raised it, my colleagues are very supportive of me, and the challenge for me is to make sure that the government does something on it. I mean, John Howard did say about the ABC, it is our enemy talking to our friends. And Mr Howard was unable to try and turn this beast of wokeness around. So it's a challenge for me and other members of the Liberal National parties to make sure the ABC is reformed, because it does do some good stuff. I know it's
it does great stuff in the regional areas. No one doubts that in regional areas where commercial players are thin on the ground, it provides a vital service. But we're talking about the bulk of its output, which is in the crowded metro market, which is relentlessly left-wing, and yet you lot keep handing over $1 billion every year to them. You may complain occasionally, but nothing actually changes. So I think people are entitled to ask, you lot are in power, why aren't you doing something about this?
Well, look, that's a fair question. It's going to be one of my KPIs for the next couple of years to make sure I get my government to seriously look into the ABC. I'm going to be blunt, I've failed so far. I've been trying for the last couple of years, but just because it takes a while. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, and the wokeness won't be removed from the ABC in a day either.
I just want to quickly play you a couple of grabs. One's from Q&A. Just have a look at this, James.
Alice, you describe yourself as someone that has experienced climate anxiety.
Probably a couple of years ago, as a result of studying what I have studied environmental and climate science, I came to the conclusion that it was unsafe, unethical probably, and just a bad choice for me to make to bring children into the world. I'd really like a family, but I'm way too scared to do it.
Yeah. Alice, like as someone who has suffered incredible climate anxiety, I had episodes of psychosis that manifested as paranoid delusions. I was on antipsychotic, 2 different kinds of antipsychotics at one point. I was seeing things. It was horrible. I can say to you that you're not alone. And when you know what you know, it's a completely ordinary, normal reaction to have when you look at what is coming.
So here, James, we have the national broadcaster quite happily advocating, I'm not quite sure what, something to do with psychotic drugs if you are scared about climate change. Before Christmas, we had an Indigenous activist calling for Indigenous Australians to go and burn stuff, and she was looking forward to it. She was cheered and applauded by the Q&A panel. The bushfires started a few days later. Whether that's connected or not, I have no idea. We also had a character calling for violence against men, violence against the patriarchy. This is how Australians' money is being spent. At no point did anyone stand up and say, well, hang on, that's your point of view, we've got a different point of view. They just let this stuff roll out there. Can you not make your colleagues realise that this is dangerous to Australians and it is certainly doing the coalition no favours whatsoever?
Oh, it's dangerous to Australians. It's dangerous to how young people are being learning to think, because they're all being put in this nice softened room and being patted on the head and told, you know, it's okay, you can have a little cry, you snowflake. But it's also dangerous for the ABC, because what is happening is normal Australians, quiet Australians, are drifting away from the ABC because it no longer represents their views. They don't want it to be left-wing or right-wing. They want the ABC to be the national broadcaster. So it's dangerous for the ABC. But yes, I think Q&A is a piercing view into the soul of the people who are running the ABC and how they see Australia in the future. And it is dangerous. And actually, it's helpful for us, because that's where they want to see the whole ABC go. And if we don't do something soon to stop the ABC from becoming totally Q&A, then we're in real trouble.
Well, James McGrath, good luck to you. I think it's a great plan. Boris Johnson, who you used to work for, is trying a similar thing in Britain, where it's a lot easier because of the licences to make the BBC a subscription service. I think you need to do it here. Well done on your plan. Let's see that your colleagues come to the party.